I'm rolling. So, Doug, thank you so much for taking time to join for the podcast. We're rolling video. I want you to introduce yourself because I don't want to do you any injustice here of who you are and why we're talking, why we know each other.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And thank you very much for having me. Folks, my name is Doug Schatz. I'm the Vice President of Partnerships at Market Hardware. We are a web marketing firm that's been working with inspectors for going on 17 years now. So we got hooked up with Kevin and his team because we saw a mutual opportunity to help out Spectora clients when it comes to improving their web presence, making sure that potential customers are finding them online, and different ways for them to create relationships with agents to lead to many future inspections.
Yep, and I love the story how I got connected with Market Hardware. It's really goes back to the origin story of Spectora. So for those that know our story, Mike and I started 5 years ago. We had a mentor that ran a site for dentists. He did software and websites and SEO for dentists, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you should go. You should call Market Hardware. Maybe you guys can have some like synergies there. The owner and his team are great." I emailed Brian, didn't hear anything back for like 6 months. And then I emailed him again. And then we finally connected. And it ended up being such a great partnership because you guys are the experts in what you do with managing digital marketing plans, paid advertising, geofencing, all this great stuff. And that was a business I didn't want to be in because we were too fractured as a software company. And we didn't do it as well as we could have, or as well as you guys do. So amazing partnership, something, we let all of our inspectors know about. So that's the relationship. So enough on that. But I kind of want to get your high level view to start for everyone listening and watching of where you see the digital landscape kind of right now. I think obviously this year's changed a lot and pulled forward, I think by no surprise, pulled forward a lot of digital efforts. But again, home inspectors are sometimes behind the curve and behind the industry in terms of adapting. Where do you see things kind of today?
Yeah, I think that, while there's a lot of things that have changed, a number of things have kind of remained the same, right? So it's really about, when we talk to different inspectors, different Spectora clients, the biggest thing that we want to do is understand the ways that you want to grow your business and then tailor recommendations for how you can effectively do that. For those that want to, grow rapidly, programs like Google Ads are a really strong and fast way to do that because you're really pulling in leads in a short and medium term perspective. Those who are looking for more measured growth over time may be a better fit for programs like SEO, where you're working to earn better placement over time. But the number one thing that we've seen is it's more competitive than ever. I mean, that's the biggest thing I try to remind folks. No matter how good you are at what you do, you want to make sure that you are keeping in mind that you're out there fighting with lots of other folks. And it's 2020 where we've had a strange year would be the understatement of the century as people have been dealing with the challenges around COVID and at the same time a really hot housing market and a bigger demand than ever before for inspectors and their services. And so I think as we head into next year and going forward, making sure that you've got a strong digital strategy in place is more important than ever.
Oh, so important. And for those that don't have the broader picture, yeah, housing's on fire. There's so much volume and demand, and more people are searching for home inspectors online than ever. So like we're literally at peaks or really busting through ceilings. So if that isn't said enough, and if you're listening, it can't be, it can't be a stronger call to action to say this winter, you have to make sure your digital strategy is there because you're leaving money on the table. No, I love that. So you talk to inspectors, obviously you talk to inspectors every week, your team does. What are some common, and for one, I actually want to back up for those that are listening. SEO being, hey, when someone Googles home inspector Atlanta, home inspector Wichita, where do you show up in those search results? And that's based on Google's algorithm. So I just want to get the basics out of the way to say, these are the set of things you do to show up when someone searches for your business. And it's not magic. It's not a scam. It's literally based on hard work and quality of your website and content. So let's get that out of the way. what are some common misperceptions or questions that inspectors have when they get to Market Hardware? When they get to you guys, what are some common things?
It's a great question. I think a lot of times the people that we speak with are coming in from a situation where they may have done a little bit of research online, or they had gotten burned by somebody before. I mean, I say this to a lot of folks I talk to. Most of the companies that are out there claiming to provide digital marketing services are quite often scam artists who
Yep.
are making promises and guarantees they can't keep.
Yep.
Search engine optimization, SEO in particular, is something that takes time to achieve results. But the great thing about it is when you get that page one exposure for the top services you provide in the top towns and cities you provide those services, all the traffic you drive is free. So it has tremendous evergreen opportunities for you when you are able to invest in it, and really work with a team that's going to help you. So it's an expectation setting thing. And I think a lot of times, the other thing I'll hear is a lot of folks try to do this on their own, which is great to try to give it a shot. But oftentimes, it's the last thing on their plate. I mean, if you've got to get out there and do 5 inspections in a day, you're not going to get home and want to do content work on your website, right? So many of the folks that we chat with come in with some preconceived notions, and sometimes we want to give them a little bit more realistic expectations about how much time it takes to do this and how long it can take. Not always long, but usually a couple of months before you're looking at results.
Yeah. And most inspectors hate writing. They don't want to write. They try to go at it. I tell people you get what you pay for. If you're putting in a half-ass effort in the evenings or weekends, or you're outsourcing it, or you're trying to automate it, it's not going to work. I'm just going to flat out, give you some tough love here and say, guys, this is my background as well. So it's like, I've seen companies go from 0 to hero. They rank first in their area. They get 5 to 10 free inspections a month. That's real money. And so to me, when people bulk at 2, 3, 4, 500 a month, I'm like, the payback on this is going to be like 5x to 10x. And it's a no brainer to me. And I think it's understanding what goes into it though. I think it's traditionally been a black box, right? Was a thing you could hack and scam years ago to rank high. Now it's a little different, right? It's based on certain factors. Like, what are some of those factors?
Yeah, I think one thing I try to remind people is, folks, if it were easy to get on page 1 of Google, everybody would be there, right? That's
Yep.
just not the world that we live in. And so an important rule of thumb is SEO and the practices that go into it is really about impressing Google, and more so than the potential customer. So when you're able to impress Google, then you're able to really start to see yourself rise in the rankings. The things that go into that, we try to bucket it into 2 categories. One is what's called on-site optimization. So on-site really refers to the strength of your content, and that can be the content on the site, that can be blog writing, and also the code that goes behind the site. And that's where Kevin and the team at Spectora do such a great job, really baking in a lot of those great elements off of which to have a foundation to be successful. The off-site factors is the second piece of that.
Let's pause there for a sec. 'Cause I think that building the site, another thing people do on their own, they go to GoDaddy's website builder and they're hindered by that because there's not those optimizations, the title tags, the alt tags, little keyword placements that add up to a big deal. So I want people to know that when you penny pinch on the website, there is an impact to it. And so I would say that whether you or we did websites, I'd tell people, like, go find a professional. Please put money into this, because inspectors will spend thousands on brochures, but then try to spend 300 on their website. And that's completely insane in this day and age. So sorry, just had to jump in.
No, I think that's actually a great point. And what I would add to that is a lot of people ask me what the ROI is on a website. Okay, I get it. Every investment you have, you're focused on ROI. There's no perfect metric out there for ROI on a website, folks. But what I would tell you is a properly structured site should last you a good 4 to 6 years. You'll make some tweaks and adjustments over time, but think about the impact of having a well-built website, investing in that, and having it last that amount of time for you, as opposed to spending a couple $100. It lasts you 6 months. You're back to square one. You're really putting yourself at a disadvantage. And I'd say the real risk of not having a good site is, number one, all the marketing, all the traffic you drive to that site, you're not going to convert it at as high a rate as you possibly could with a more professional looking site. And the thing is, those do-it-yourself sites, you can't quantify the number of missed opportunities you have by not having a more professional site out there.
Yeah, we've all bought the cheap thing on Amazon and then 3 months later bought the thing we should have bought the first time. And then you end up spending more money and you're like, oh shit, I should have just bought the first thing that was worth the money.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
all right. Number two, the second bucket.
Yeah, so offsite optimization. Offsite optimization is the act of trying to drive quality inbound links. So an inbound link is anywhere on the web that your website address is listed, where if somebody were to click on it, it would bring them over to your site. So Google looks at that as sort of like a virtual handshake. Like, hey, we trust this business and therefore let's give them a little bit of a boost with their rankings. And so smart SEO strategies combine the offsite and then strong inbound links. Now, I want to be clear. It's not just the quantity of links. Okay, there's lots of things on the internet you don't want to be connected to, folks. But when you have good links coming from strong sources, Google sees that as a factor of authority, something that makes you more relevant than your competitors. And that's what we're going to keep coming back to. Being more relevant than your competitors in the eyes of Google means that Google is producing better results for people who are out there searching for your services.
Okay, so say a home inspector's neighbor is a veterinarian, would a link from that site carry as much weight from, say, a link from something in the home inspection industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. You really want to try to keep your links to industry specific links. Now, I'd give an example that might fall sort of in the middle of that is if you work with other, perhaps you have relationships with local contractors. So if you refer business back and forth with Doug's Plumbing Company, for example, well, it would be good for Doug's Plumbing Company to have a little page or a little link on their site that says we work with Kevin's Inspection Company, and then have Kevin's Inspection Company link back to Doug's Plumbing Company. So we don't want to go into the irrelevant industries, but when you have those strong links from home service related industries and you keep them local, that's where you create the separation from your competition that the average inspector or inspection business is not doing.
That's huge. Yeah. And good job explaining that. Cause yeah, I think it's worth letting people know that the quality of the links, and these are people in your network that you already work with. If you're an experienced inspector, or if you're new, you start working with certain agents. What goes into someone wanting to link to another site? Cause I think you could ask someone for a link and then they do it or don't do it. But then what's the other big hook for someone to link to Kevin's inspection site or, a page on my site?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, first of all, the hook should be helping to explain the value to both parties. And when you're able to do that, look, folks, I'll tell you right away, when I ask my clients who they work with locally, it's easy to add a link to their site to that business. It can be challenging to get that business to link back to you, but the hook should be the mutual benefit. The fact that everybody is going to win from it. There's also just some nice built-in credibility that it lends you with other folks that are looking at your site. So the digital piece is important, but I try to remind everybody, connecting with people in your community and connecting with people in your industry means that everybody's winning. And that's the kind of stuff that Google wants to see.
Love it. Yeah. Local association. And if you have great content, if you have good blog posts, I think that can also help add credibility and be a great reason for, contractors to want to link to you. So, so content and links, boom, really important factors, right? Okay. So this is good. Let's shift gears here and focus on the new to 1 to 2 year inspector. Big majority of the industry, lots of guys trying to make it. Let's go through like a quick playbook for like, hey, how do you get started on the right foot? What are smart things you can do to set yourself up for success?
I think the number one thing everybody in that position has to do is be realistic. And what I mean by that is, come in with some kind of budget in mind that you can sustain for a period of time. There are lead sources like Home Advisor and Angie's List, but I think, Kevin and I would agree, Those are fine stopgaps, but those don't have long-term value for your business. So for those that are just getting started out, whether you're a couple months in, a year or two, we really recommend kind of two solutions for that potentially. SEO is something everybody should consider, regardless of where they are in their business experience, but it will take a little bit more time. Something that I recommend to those that are a little bit newer is you want to create those agent relationships. You need to build those relationships in order to lead to a one-to-many impact on the number of inspections you do. So a great way to do that, in the times that we live in now, and we will get on the other side of it, but I think we'll be seeing the impacts of COVID changing businesses for a long time, is the ability to deliver digital business cards. And that can be done through a program called Geofencing, which essentially is digital banners that are delivered to anybody who enters a specific address. So think about that for a second. If you were able to deliver digital business cards to somebody who to an agent's office, and maybe there's one agent there, maybe there's 10 or 20, you're really getting a reach that would take so much more effort for you to do offline than it would be online. And then you're creating relationships that really lead to exponential growth. And that's how you take your 1 to 2 year operation and really ramp up your ability to grow.
I love this concept too, because I'm a big believer that the old guard of real estate agents and the rainmakers, they always went into the office. They still do. They'll go back if they had a period of time of being out of the office. So think of this as clusters of rainmaking agents, and you can get your business card in front of them for pennies, right? I mean, this
Yep.
is kind of what we're talking about here, is like getting a fancy looking banner of Joe's Home Inspection Services in front of these people. And gosh, impressions alone, you just think of branding and impressions, that's got to work at some point. And you guys have seen good results from it.
Yeah, we've seen great results from it. And what's nice about it is, like Kevin's talking about, you're not paying for clicks as you do with Google Ads. So just a reminder, this doesn't mean Google Ads is wrong, folks. It just means you pay for clicks when you run it. It can be very successful. With digital banners, geofencing, you're paying for impressions, and it costs 1 penny, give or take, for each impression. So that means a couple $100, and that's tens of thousands of ad impressions. It gives you that ability to stay in front of agents or even potential home buyers as they go through the process of looking for somebody in your shoes.
That's really interesting too, because when you think about, I tell new inspectors, hey, focus on your local neighborhood in terms of, connections, local associations, and then get your Google My Business set up, maybe get a review or two, because proximity matters when someone's searching for a home inspector, and you have a higher chance of connecting with people within your 20-mile radius. And so the geofencing lends itself to that. Whereas like, what if someone's surfing the internet or was on Zillow or wherever, and they see your banner and then they need a home inspector the next week? It's just kind of a layup.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about it is it takes almost no time at all to turn on. When you're able to ramp this up, you're not waiting for something to have an impact. You can get a campaign like this up and running within a week. Now, you got to have a great ad copy to make it work. We've all seen those unprofessional banners online that nobody ever clicks on. You got to have a good ad copy, and you got to lead people to a site that's going to convert them. And that's where the Spectora sites do such a great job of converting not just potential home buyers, but agents themselves into really strong long-term relationships.
Yeah, it's got to be a clean site and landing page that they land on. The message has to be clear and concise. And you guys help with all that, right? You guys help craft the copy and the.
Absolutely. Yeah. We make sure that it's great to drive all the traffic in the world, but if they don't turn into relationships or inspections, then it's just wasted money. And there's lots of ways you can waste money on the web. Believe me, folks, I've talked to a lot of people about it over the years. So conversions are the key. And a conversion is a direct call or email or scheduled inspection that you're able to book.
Yeah. I actually dissuade a lot of new inspectors from even trying Google Ads, because I think every week I hear a story of someone trying it. They don't, and most inspectors, to your credit, or to, like, in fairness, it's hard to spend $1,000 a month on ads. That's usually what it takes to actually see some volume benefits. Most inspectors try 300, 250. They run it out. They don't know the keywords they're targeting. So I would caution everybody, if you're thinking of this, if you're new within your first couple of years, make sure you're really going with a professional company, or you have the bazookas loaded to throw some money at it, because Google's a multi-billion dollar, a quarter company. They make
Yeah.
billions every quarter because of that. So caution there.
Yeah, I think that really the 1-2 punch for those that are a little bit earlier in their operation is setting aside a budget where you can focus on SEO in the medium term, grow your placement and your relevance online, and then start to generate that free traffic and those free leads. And use geofencing as a tactic to create those agent relationships in the short to medium term while you're waiting for some of that SEO to kick in. Let me be clear, with SEO, you can get wins within months, but it's a program that you're going to want to continue to do over time, because even if you get onto page one, every inspector you just leapfrog is going to be fighting for that placement to get it back. So that's a 1-2 punch that we've seen be really successful for those that are a little bit earlier in their operation.
Yeah. And tell me if you agree with this. I tell new inspectors, hey, when you're new, you have more time than money. And we're not saying to not ever try writing or to never put something on your site. I think early on, you can do yourself some favors if you answer some of those commonly asked questions, which, you could find online easily, of like, how long does a home inspection take? What's the average home inspection cost? Answer these basic questions on your site to give yourself some little foundation. So then once you do make those relationships and start doing 5, 10, 15 inspections a month, you can say, cool, I want to pay a professional to do this to keep it rolling. Does that seem like a good game plan for the new guy? Because I know it's tough for them to probably justify paying, 300-400 a month out the gate.
Yeah, it's challenging for anybody to justify that cost when you're trying to, just pull inspections in where you can. So lots of folks I've spoken to, including Spectora clients, we also give people tips on how they can do this stuff on their own. Like you said, until they're really ready and they're busier and they can't do it anymore, to work with somebody who can step in and really handle that on a monthly basis for them, so that they're continuing to grow their daily, weekly, monthly inspections. We can give you the tips to lay the groundwork, and then you can bring somebody like us back in to take the next step.
Got it. No, I like it. So new inspectors, make sure you have a solid website. Don't let that lose you business. Work on those agent relationships, get out and network, get those first couple inspections, get a couple Google reviews to start. Give yourself some momentum there, and maybe take a hack at getting some content written on your site. Reach out to Doug or myself if you need ideas or want to, even find what to write about or where to even find it. We can help there. So cool.
Yeah, and I would just to add real quickly, those reviews are critical. You got to have those reviews, folks. I know Kevin talks about it all the time, but we can't emphasize it enough. Reviews are like your online insurance policy. Okay, if you don't have one, you are putting yourself at tremendous risk, even if you're doing inspections. So make sure you have a strategy in place for that, because each positive review you get is going to put you in a stronger and stronger position with Google.
Big SEO signal for sure. All right. So got the solo guy, get going, get momentum. Now let's talk about the guy that maybe has a little bit of that momentum. So a lot of people watching, listening might be at that 5, 10, 30 inspections a month. You have the budget. You're just not sure where to go to grow. So let's talk about a good way to think about these things for that phase of business.
Yeah, so for those folks that are pretty well established here, looking to really expand their operation and expand their growth locally, you probably have relationships with a handful of local agents. You've got a good referral network from people who know you. I think that you should also be working on your search engine optimization strategy. Perhaps you got to where you are without really paying attention to it, or trying to do a little bit of it on your own. But the next step in your progression is create more evergreen lead opportunities and pay really strong attention to SEO. You have the budget at this point, and depending on your market, there's going to be a lot of towns and cities for a lot of you to focus on. So I think it's really, really important that you make SEO a key piece of your strategy as you develop those agent relationships over time.
And it's 1 to 2 inspections worth a month. So think about that. If you're doing 10, that's a very small fraction. That's 10 to 20%. If you're doing 30, that's even smaller percent of your monthly budget and inspections. So I think the mental model needs to be, hey, I need to set aside budget for the digital world, which is kind of consuming everything now. So I think it's foolish for people that don't set aside something to account for this thing that everyone's using over here. We talk about it, we live it, we use it every day, but yet some inspectors refuse to invest in it. So inspectors at this phase, you typically don't rank first, second, or third in Google if you're in a somewhat competitive city. But you're in a position to maybe put a dent and maybe gain some ground. And so, yeah, again, does this go back to the content, the geofencing, the linking that comes with an SEO program? And that's how they can gain ground, right?
Yeah, I think my advice to a lot of folks is just go to Google and search for your services in the local towns and cities you serve. It's such a simple task, and we run free ranking reports, so we can show you this if you ever want to email some cities to us. Being aware of your placement is so important, because even if you're having a good month or a good year, um, there are people nipping at your heels all the time. And if you're ranking well in your local town or city, I bet there's a lot of other markets that you want to show up better in. Maybe the area is growing. Maybe there are other towns and cities nearby that are growing. You need to solidify your placement, like Kevin said, with strong content strategy. Um, and at this point, hopefully you're so busy that you don't have the time to do this yourself. You need to bring in an agency that understands your industry, and share with them your story. How did you get here? Where do you want to be in 6 months or a year from now? Inbound linking, content, these are all critical pieces that need to be done on a consistent basis to help you take the next step in your evolution.
And this is, I want to be clear, this is my philosophy in this industry, and it's very clear from my vantage point because I see the numbers and I see the churn. You have to be growing or you're dying. Like, and I think that urgency isn't quite there. And I think that's exactly what's at stake when we talk about hitting on all cylinders, agent relationships, the in-person stuff, and digital. And I think the people that ignore it I see them getting leapfrogged. I see businesses that are crushing it, and they're paying attention to all these areas. And so that's what's at stake. I think most people don't think there's a consequence to not paying attention to this. And to me, it's all about your mindset of how you view this industry. And I think it's easy to cruise when times are good. I think if you really want to grow, and you have to be hungry in this industry to continue to get market share, because there are so many talented, good young home inspectors getting in the business that are killing it on the digital front.
Yep.
And I want everyone to realize you can too. It's
Yeah.
doable. You just get the right people in your corner, you know?
I think one thing I hear a lot, which might surprise folks, and I think some are less likely to share this out of how it might sound, but a lot of people say, well, I'm afraid I'm going to grow too quickly if I try to do this. I mean, I know you hear this too, right? I don't know how much more I can take on. I'm so busy right now. I can't think about marketing because I'm so busy. That is exactly the time that you should be thinking about your marketing and your strategy when you're busy. You probably have some budget to work with. You've got a growth strategy down the road. And folks, I say this to a lot of people I talk to, high class problems to have. Let's cross that bridge when you get there. But if you're busy right now, you need to be preparing for 3, 6, 12 months down the road to make sure that you are continuing to capture opportunities. Because like Kevin said, there are a lot of young, savvy business operators who are stepping into the digital space now. And if you're not taking action, then you're falling behind.
It's an absolute land grab, relationship grab. And I think there's got to be urgency behind it because I'm seeing it happen in real time. And so, yeah, to me, it's like if you're not advancing in this area, you're falling behind. And I hate even saying that because it's, I like the whole selling fear thing. It's not selling fear. It's just telling you what's literally happening in front of our eyes and how people are adapting to this kind of digital COVID world. And gosh, I want to help everybody, but it's just like, you got to want to help yourself and realize that sales and growth heals all. You'll figure it out. That's
Yeah.
what I want to tell people.
Yeah, I think that one thing that we see kind of often with this is, um, like I said, a tendency to just be focused on the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
And, programs like SEO, programs like geofencing are meant to help you expand your opportunities. But folks, 92% of all searches occur on Google. 92%. A couple of years ago, it was in the 70s and 80s. It's expanding rapidly. That is a huge number, especially on smartphones and mobile devices, especially as you have a younger generation of new home buyers pulling up their smartphone, doing research. So you have to make sure it's a part of your daily, weekly, monthly, yearly strategy, because you got a lot of competitors out there who are doing exactly that.
I think I saw an NAR stat too that said something like 50% of buyers will still go and Google when their agent gives them a recommendation for an inspector. So then guess what they're seeing? They're seeing if you have reviews, they're seeing your placement, they're seeing your website. So for the mid career inspector, so we're talking get into an SEO program, focus on it, have a goal maybe for Google reviews. Have a number you want to get to, because that number will spur some action to kind of set up your post inspection emails. Use a service that helps gather reviews, something to get to that 50 to 100 number. Like I really see a tipping point, right? When you get to 50 plus Google reviews. What else? What else should they be thinking about? Maybe links. I think there's opportunities with those relationships to get links at that point, right?
Yeah, I think there really is. And the other thing is, you owe it to yourself at that point to be focused as you develop relationships along the way, looking for ways to generate quality inbound links. Many of you belong to your local chamber of commerce, as Kevin mentioned earlier. That's a simple one. Driving links from the affiliations or accreditations or certifications that you've gotten are critical, easy things to do. I know it's easy for me to say it, and you say, well, what do I have to do to actually pull this off? It's not that complicated. But those are the types of things that really get you leverage with the search engines and then with potential customers. I also would say, for a lot of folks at this level, geofencing is a smart tactic. The key thing is, for many of you, you want to be really tactical about how you do it. And what I mean by that is compiling a list of the folks that you've maybe been knocking on the door of or were in the past, want to knock down that door. If you know that you're better than the inspector who's been doing work for another local agent, geofence them. Do things to try to expand your agent referral network, but be really targeted about who you choose to send that to.
Love it. I love it. And we have templates for ways to ask for links. I think I've sent, inspectors a few where there's an art to it. And I think having content helps. If you just say, hey, agent, I have a list of 8 things sellers need to be thinking about before they list their home. Would you mind linking to it from your site? So that kind of helps be the driving force behind getting links. Okay. So now let's talk about the multi-inspector companies. So typically, 3 to 5 to 10 to 20 inspectors, big footprint, great relationships. They don't always rank first, second, or third, shockingly enough. I've seen some big multis that are on page 2, and I'm thinking, you're just leaving so much money on the table. So how should they be approaching and thinking about SEO? They obviously have the resources, maybe not the focus and mindset on it.
Yeah, I think that, you put it perfectly. The resources are there. A lot of times we see those multi-inspector operations really pulling in a lot from Google Ads because they've got some budget to work with. And that's great, folks. But there's nothing these operations should love more than free leads. And yes, you need to invest with a company like us to get better rankings on Google, the labor involved in that. But Google Ads is only going to continue to get more expensive. And the thing I try to remind people is when you're running big ad programs, you're competing with the Home Advisors and the Angie's List and these lead services that have bigger budgets than you. That's the bottom line, right? Yep. They spend millions of dollars a year on it. So search engine optimization should be just as important, if not more so, to the multi-inspector operations, because it's something that you can really put in place and let it go for some time in order to start to gain as much market share in every town or city that you serve locally, because it's a place where if you're not defending it, your smaller competitors are going to leapfrog you. That's the biggest risk you have. If smaller competitors get better placement organically than you, they're spending less than you are on Google Ads to get that placement, then they're able to grow their operations more efficiently because they're getting more free leads.
And think about the impact of picking off a couple home buyers a week. That adds up 52 weeks a year. You're talking hundreds of inspections, maybe that the solo guy or maybe the 2-3 man company is taking from you just because they know the game plan and they know these strategies. Yeah. So to multis, I say the game plan is you have the volume to get more Google reviews. You have the budget to blow it out with great content with working with like a market hardware. So is it more of just the decision to do it at that point because they have the footprint, they have the relationships, they have all the tools? Is it just more of a decision at that point?
Yeah, the biggest thing I've seen is most folks, almost all of them that have reached that point, have worked with somebody in the past and gotten burned,
Right.
right? So, and we see this across any number of industries we work in. I mean, lots of businesses, especially been around for 10 plus years, have cycled through a couple of SEO providers before. Maybe you had your nephew do it or a family friend. Maybe you hired an overseas agency or somebody local who really didn't understand your industry. And so you probably throw your hands up and say, it didn't work for me before. Why would I believe it's going to work for me now? I really think it's about fit. And like so many things that you do with your business, you need to find the right fit and a company that sets good expectations. That's what we focus on at Market Hardware. But there has to be a partnership that exists here. With any agency you work with, you don't want to think of them as a vendor. You want to think of them as a partner, an agile relationship that allows you to share feedback about what's working and what isn't. Here are the areas that we need to improve our rankings in. I want to add another inspector on this side of the city. What can you do to help me? Communication is the key. 3 pieces of SEO are knowing what to do, actually doing it, and then reporting on it. Lots of companies can do 1 or 2 of those things, but you need a professional firm like us who can do all 3. And when those things come together, that's when you're going to see exponential growth for your business.
You brought up such a great point, and this applies to solo all the way up to multi, or probably not brand new, but like mid-career experienced inspectors up to multis. I like you said, they had someone maybe do SEO for them 5-10 years ago. It's so important for everyone to know what worked even 5 years ago doesn't work today, and there may be a reason why you're on page 2 now. Maybe you're on page 1 back when you could just put a bunch of keywords in your footer, or just put home inspector Austin, Dallas, San Antonio in your footer. That those things need to be unwound, and I think you can't ignore it. There's modern techniques that now work. Burying your head and just saying, oh, it didn't work is not the right approach, because Google's algorithm has evolved. So I think the longer you ignore it, the more you just put yourself at risk, and the harder it is to dig out of that hole. So I love that you brought that up, because I do look at a lot of multi-inspector sites and I'm like, okay, they've had some stuff done. Those techniques don't work anymore. You have to evolve.
Yeah, this, like so many things with the web, what was easy 10 years ago isn't today. The
Mm-hmm.
good thing about SEO is that what they call white hat best practices that were true 5 years ago, which again is the stuff we've talked about. Good content is the core piece of SEO. Having good content is where it starts. Good code underlying your site, strong title tag structure, all of those things. That's been true for some time, but the short gimmicky stuff, what are called link farms, or like Kevin said, keyword stuffing every city or town you serve. Folks, Google is smarter than that. Okay. There's a reason they do hundreds of billions of dollars a year and they're $1 trillion company, but you don't need to try to outsmart Google. You're not going to be able to do it, just to be very polite with you. You need to have a strategy and a partner who works with you to set good expectations and then implements that work. And when it's done properly, you see major rank increases. That's what we always focus on. There's a lot of work that goes into this stuff, but at the end of the day, you have to have a way you define success. And that's taking you from page 2, page 10, not ranking at all, onto page 1 of Google.
Let's break down, because we've talked about content marketing. It's no secret. Everyone understands it's important. Let's drill a layer deeper for those that want to understand it better, because just checking the box isn't enough nowadays to just have an article that says, how much does a home inspection cost? I want everyone to think about, and maybe you can help shed light on this, of like aspects of quality content, and then how Google's paying more attention to user metrics in terms of like, hey, did they actually read the whole article, or did they just hit the back button and go to the next article? So it actually has to be, you got to please Google, but pleasing Google means pleasing humans. So it's a fascinating game. And I think maybe this is too in the weeds, but I think inspectors need to know the thought and the work that goes into writing good content, because that's what they're paying for in a sense.
Yeah. So I think one really important thing to just remember is start by never copying any content that's out
Oh,
there.
good call. Good call.
Right. So that's an important piece because there's lots of good content. When it comes to your site in particular, you don't need to reinvent the wheel here, folks. You can take good content and help repurpose that. But this is a classic example. So many of our clients just feel like they have to rack their brain. They sit down in front of a blank screen and they're like, what am I going to do? Right. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you want to, this stuff. You can write about it. What makes good content structure is, this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but um, telling Google what it is you do and where you do it. And that doesn't mean listing every town or city you serve in every sentence, but just saying we've been providing home inspection and radon inspection services for the greater Bethesda, Maryland area, including towns and cities nearby like blank, blank, and blank for over 50 years. So that's a simple sentence that I put together, but we're not jamming keywords into it. We have natural flow to how it's written. I also want to point out, you don't have to write 1,000 words. You don't have time for that. So when it comes to a strong content strategy, don't reinvent the wheel. Repurpose content and structuring it in a way that's natural to read, because one thing Google's paying attention to, as Kevin was alluding to, is user interaction. Basically, the way that content is structured on a page, they're going to start paying more attention to how users interact with that. And the better the user experience, the more likely Google is to rank you higher.
Yes, exactly. And I want to challenge everyone, every inspector, to be in the moment when you're talking to your clients and agents. Ask them questions, and that's content. So I think I'm a big fan of taking real world content, putting it online, because guarantee you get 3 questions every inspection. You should be answering those online, because if they're asking you face to face, there's a good chance there's 1,000 people Googling it in your state or area. So soak that up, try to remember it, jot it down, and whether you work with Market Hardware, do it yourself, make sure those questions get answered in a blog post.
Yeah, and having great content on your site, folks, can also save you time, right? This is an important thing to remember.
Ah,
Those common FAQs that you answer all the time, um, many of you probably do have it on your site, but I bet a lot of you are saying, I'm so tired of answering this question over and over and over. Why can't they just get it? Well, people are lazy, unfortunately. So say, hey, we've got information about that on our website. Use your FAQs to reduce your overhead and make your life easier.
oh, that I'm so glad you brought that up, because I totally forgot that time is money, and you have agents and clients that call you before and after the inspection, typically asking you questions, and
Yep.
those can all be handled in follow-up text messages and emails with links to your website. That's SEO gold right there, and you save yourself
Beautiful.
time. So to me, there's basically a double net gain there on the time and rankings and SEO with the click-through rates. Um, yeah, talk to me a little about kind of what you're seeing on the ground level, results wise, tracking. So like say, inspectors, we know we have mutual clients that have been working with you for a while. What's some of the feedback? What's some of the fun side of coming out on the other end and saying, holy crap, we're starting to move up in these rankings and get some clicks here.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I think I'd point out on Google Trends, which is a tool you can use to look up how
Ooh,
commonly things are searched for,
yeah.
the search for home inspection or home inspector near me have reached a 5-year high. They've never been higher. So what that's meant is the clients we're working with where we're getting the wins, we're seeing more conversions. We're seeing better clients. That's a big piece here, right? Because if you're using lead services, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's where you are in your business life cycle, but I'm sure you're going to do a lot of haggling. The better you're ranking for these top services, these top search phrases, the better the leads you tend to get. So happy homeowners mean happy inspectors, mean happy relationship with us and with you. And that's really what we're hearing on the ground. We're seeing really good ranking improvements, and that's why the Spectora websites are so good with Google and have such strong credibility. You got the right foundation in place to be successful with lots of clients.
Optimizing for the near me was always a challenge for me years ago when I was doing SEO, because when you're writing on a website, writing the phrase near me feels it's near you typically is how you're wording it to a customer. Yeah. Any insight on that? Is it just getting the word near in there helpful, or zip codes? I think it's a confusing one for a lot of people.
Yeah, we really try to tend to focus on cities and towns themselves. So
Mm.
let's say that I'm physically located in Bethesda, Maryland. And if I type in home inspector near me, what I would see are businesses that have optimized for Bethesda. But if I'm trying to focus on 2 or 3 towns over, even somebody who optimizes for that town or city can get onto page 1. So Kensington is a couple towns away. If they type in home inspector Kensington, you're going to get the same results as somebody in that area that types in home inspector near me. So the key is tell Google where you want to work. I mean, it sounds simple, folks, but
Yeah.
Google only knows what you tell Google. If you're putting don't assume that just because you're located next to another town or city, you're going to rank well there. I can't tell you how many times we looked at websites where people say, I can't believe I'm not coming up. Well, it turns out they've never even listed that city once
Not
in
once.
the website,
Not
right?
telling Google at all. Yeah.
So you got to tell Google the narrative about what's important to you. Perhaps you do specific types of inspections, commercial or wells or wherever you may be. But don't take it for granted. Don't assume that just because you've been the best at what you've done for a long time, that Google just picks up on that. You have to tell Google. And when you do that, your ability to rank well in those towns or cities when people search for near me can be incredibly impactful.
Oh, you worded that so well. You got to have pages for these ancillary services. Everything that's said verbally, it's the heavy lift to move that all online. And
Right.
it's like 20 years in the making. And a lot of companies, I talk to the inspector, I'm like, man, you're kick ass, you're growing, you're doing all these great things. And I look at his website and like, they don't match up. It's
Right.
telling me the opposite story about your business. It tells me you're old, you're about to retire, you don't care anymore. That's what we want everyone to focus on, is like, is your site telling the same story as what's happening in real life?
Yeah. And I think, folks, if you haven't taken a look, regardless of whether you work with Market Hardware or not, I just highly recommend take a look at your site. When was the last time you actually sat down and reviewed the content? Does it reflect the services you still provide? Is it up to date on your background? Do you have new certifications, affiliations? All of this stuff goes into a well-rounded strategy. We've got a tip sheet that we're happy to give to anybody with free tips on things that you need to do to make sure that you've got the right web presence. Because regardless of who you work with online or whether you're going to do it yourself or not, I think, the biggest takeaway Kevin and I would have is just you have to pay attention to this stuff, because business owners who don't are going to fall by the wayside.
Especially coming to the holidays, you'll have a window to be able to do it. And think about it this way. You mentioned earlier, I hear this all the time too. I'm too busy. I've been too busy. So when you're busy, think about it this way. If you're busy, you might be funneling people to your website because say you can't take the call, or say they just get to your website. Maybe they don't have a great experience. So now because you're busy, people are going to your website and having a worse experience than if they were to speak to you. And now you're losing business, all because you're too busy to take care of the thing, your backstop. I think your website is your backstop. Um, I had one inspector. It's awesome. When someone calls or texts them, I think he auto sends them a message back that gives them the URL to book on his website. And he said he saved a
Oh,
couple jobs
perfect.
because of that. It's a great strategy. Well, cool. What else? Yeah. What else is interesting to you? What else do you hear? What else do you think inspectors don't know about that we can kick some knowledge and kind of give them some good things to go away with here in the last couple minutes?
Yeah, I think the key takeaway I would have is, while the market is doing really well right now, and we have no reason to believe that's going to change dramatically, your messaging needs to be a big part of your strategy as you head into next year. Don't rest on your laurels. Don't rest on having a good year. Set up a strategy for your 2021 planning at this point so that you make sure you have a plan to continue to grow. As you head into winter, I know that things are naturally cooling off in many markets, not everywhere, but that's exactly the time that you should be focused on where you want to be next spring and next summer. That's a key piece of what SEO can do. I also think it's important to continue to grow your list of referral opportunities. Whether you do this, geofencing or programs like that, and we've had an unbelievable amount of interest in it and really successful campaigns. At the very least, you should have a spreadsheet or a Word doc or something, folks, that allows you to keep track of the people that you want to get connected with as you go forward. And just continue to pay attention to your reviews. Your online strategy, so much of that is based on reviews. Like Kevin said, half, I suspect maybe even more than half of people who hear about you, the first thing they do is they Google you. And the first thing that comes up typically are your Google reviews and your Google My Business page. Generating reviews should be very inexpensive. It's time. This is the kind of stuff that we talk to folks about all the time. You have to make the time. It can't be an afterthought, because so many people come to us and they say, I haven't paid attention to this. I know it was important, but can you save me? Can you help me? Really what you're doing is you're limiting your options when you make that decision later than you should. And when you put yourself in that position, it makes it harder to have the right growth strategy. So, that was a long answer to a short question, but I think that you need to be setting yourself up now in the next 2 months for your 2021 planning, and don't put it off any longer.
Yeah, I love it. And I challenge everyone, book time in your calendar, literally block it off. I don't care. Like I say it this way, if you block off and do morning hours, because that's when you're going to be most creative and not exhausted from doing 2 inspections. But if you block out an hour or two, I promise you, if someone goes onto your scheduler, they'll find an inspection in the next day or two. You're not losing money by doing this. You're prioritizing your future. You're prioritizing your digital presence. So block off the time and then write into either of us. If you just blank when you sit down, you're like, how do I do this? I think you got to block off the time, find people that can guide you, and then actually take action. And I think inspectors can be fear-based and say, I just want to keep all the acorns I've gathered and not, take any risk here. This is an area where I think you can't afford to not take action and just have some faith and listen to the things you're hearing and try to understand it at a basic level if you're going to be hiring someone to do it. But I challenge everyone, make it a priority, because things will heat up quicker than usual every spring, the end of winter. And then again, you're too busy to do it and falls by the wayside.
Yeah, I think that that's a great strategy. And the thing I would just add is what makes us such great partners for one another is we're invested in your success, whether we work with you or not. There are lots of conversations we have. And if all that happens, folks, is you come away from that discussion knowing more about how these things work than you knew when you went into it, that's a victory. Everybody has to make the right decisions for their business. But the real enemy here is indecision. If you are holding yourself back by being afraid, or you don't want to look foolish for asking questions, believe me, I've heard it all. I've been doing this 11 years now. There are no bad questions, but the real enemy is not asking those questions and not taking steps to improve your online strategy, your review strategy, everything that you can do to grow your business online.
Love it. Where's the best place for people to find you guys? The website, I'll put it in the description. Any social media outlet, anything. You guys have a newsletter or social media presence that people can follow?
No, I appreciate you asking. We send out monthly newsletters to our clients, and I'm happy to get those sent to anybody on this call. We talk about like important topics and kind of new stuff that's going on. Everybody can go ahead and email Doug@markethardware.com if you're interested in setting up a time to chat. We're here to be a resource for you. I've got a team here that has been really experienced working with inspectors. We talked to more home inspectors this year than ever before. So the nice thing is our insight into the industry has grown. And we've been doing it for 15 plus years. And you can always visit markethardware.com for any additional information, schedule a consultation. We're here to be a resource for you.
Love it. Right on. Appreciate the time, Doug. This is great, man. I think people will learn a lot from this. And if nothing else, take some action and light a fire to get on this. So really appreciate it.
Appreciate your time today. Thanks for having me on.
Right on. We'll see you, buddy.
All right.